Okay, so welcome to the Redox OS board meeting for the first quarter of 2024. I call the meeting of the board of directors of Redox OS nonprofit to order. When I state your name, please acknowledge your presence. So I'm Ron Williams, I'm present. Jeremy Solar,
Present.
Alberto Souza.
Present.
So we have a quorum. We also have a guest in a guest role for now, Jacob Schneider.
Hello.
Okay, so first order of business is the minutes from the last meeting. So the minutes from the previous board meeting have been provided to you. Are there any corrections? If there are no corrections, the minutes are approved as distributed. As required by the bylaws, the Redox OS nonprofit elects its directors and officers each year. And just to clarify, an officer is someone who performs duties on behalf of the board, while a director is a voting member of the board. And for our case, Redox officers are also directors. So as we elect our officers, we're also electing them as members of the board. And in particular, the president presides over the board meetings and the vice president acts in the president's place if the president cannot attend a board meeting. So I'd like to open the floor to nominees for president and director.
I nominate Ron Williams to the office of president and director.
Are there any other nominees for president and director? If there are no other nominees, all those in favor of myself, Ronald Williams, for president and director, say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Yours truly, Ron Williams, is elected president and director. I would like to open the floor to nominees for vice president and director. Alberto? You're muted, Alberto.
Wait, sorry. I nominate Jeremy Solar to the office of Vice President and Director.
Are there any other nominees for vice president and director? If there are no other nominees, all those in favor of Jeremy Solar for vice president and director say aye. Those opposed say no. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Jeremy Solar is elected vice president and director. I would like to open the floor to nominees for secretary and director.
I nominate Alberto Souza as secretary and director.
If there are no other nominees, all those in favor of Alberto Souza for secretary and director say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Alberto Souza is elected secretary and director. I would like to open the floor to nominees for treasurer.
I nominate Jeremy Solar for Treasurer.
If there's no other nominees, all those in favor of Jeremy Solar for treasurer say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Jeremy Solar is elected treasurer. I would like to open the floor to nominees for other directors.
I nominate Jacob Schneider for director.
If there's no other nominees, all those in favor of Jacob Schneider for director say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Jacob Schneider is elected director. Jacob, welcome to the board.
Thank you, everyone.
Jeremy, can we get an informal report of the 2023 finances?
During 2023, we began transitioning income and expenses to the Redox OS nonprofit. This report reflects that transition. So first, I'm going to list income items. There was an initial donation of $10,000. All of these amounts will be in US dollars. Patreon from February to December, that's from the beginning of the nonprofit to the end of the year, $6,747.79. T-shirts, which are on Teespring that we just started doing, $242.99. And that totals to a gross income of $16,990.78. For expenses, we have hired Alberto Souza as community manager. From October to December, that cost was $1,200. Filings, particularly with the Colorado State, $50. Hosting costs, those are on DigitalOcean, $345.60. That comes to a total gross expenses $1,595.60. The net income for 2023 was $15,395.18. Our bank balance is at this moment $15,967.39. There's a balance at Teespring and PayPal of $242.99. Credit card balance of $815.20. That should be, is that negative, Ron?
Credit card is subtracted, yes.
Yeah, that would be negative. And I believe these were measured as of December 31st.
Yes.
So net assets, $15,395.18. We will produce a formal report to be presented at the next board meeting. We will also publish that report, and I would like to add that we'll also need to file with the Colorado State our annual report, because we were the organization was created in February, so we will have to file our annual report in February.
Thank you, Jeremy. So I would like to present the budget for 2024. I want to, first of all, identify some of the assumptions that were made in creating the budget. So at this point, we are not, we're assuming that there's no new sources of donation because we don't know the amount that those would be. So we've just set them to zero for the time being. So the budget is based on the current inflow of donations, which is primarily from Patreon and some T-shirt revenue. The budget will have to be adjusted as we get donations in, and small donations won't change the projections very much, but large donations might cause us to have to do some additions to the budget to reflect the available money. The funding for the trademark application, which was originally allocated in 2023, has been carried forward and increased slightly. So it's still just an estimate of the amount that it will actually cost to create the Redox OS trademark. And the budget currently contains an amount for 2 Redox Summer of Code projects. And if we can find ways to directly fund some of our Summer of Code projects, for example, through Google Summer of Code, that money might not get spent, or we might spend that in addition to the projects that Google Summer of Code might fund, for example. So for the annual amounts, again in US dollars, server hosting would be about $1,440. Community manager will be about $4,800 for the year. We've allocated a miscellaneous amount of $500. The legal and trademark is $5,000, and the accounting filings, income tax filings, etc., might cost a certain amount of money. There's $500 allocated for that as well. Again, the miscellaneous amounts and the accounting and filing amounts are sort of catch-alls. So if we have expenses, the money can come out of there. Redox summer of code, we've estimated $11,000. So that gives us a total expenses of $23,240. In terms of income, we're expecting approximately $7,200 via Patreon. And then through t-shirt sales, we're estimating $360. Hopefully we can increase that number, but we have to go with what we've seen so far and project that forward. So that's the number that we'll be using here. Any other grants, etc., will have to be included once we have them. So that gives us total income based on these estimates right now of $7,560. So that gives us a net deficit of $15,680. And then given the current bank balance and credit card balance, that will give us approximately $0, somewhat less than $0, $346 in the negative based on this accounting. Obviously, we can't let ourselves get that low, but this is the budget we're going forward with. And as I said, we'll have to adjust as we are able to generate additional donations. Can I get a motion to adopt the budget as presented and authorize the treasurer to make expenditures according to the budget?
Move it.
Seconded.
Does anyone have any questions or changes or any further discussion regarding the budget? If there's no further discussion, it's moved and seconded that the budget will be adopted as presented and the treasurer be authorized to make expenditures according to the budget. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
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 Upon motion duly moved, seconded, and carried, it was resolved that the budget be adopted as presented and the treasurer is authorized to make expenditures according to the budget. Can I get a motion to discuss the fundraising plan?
Moved.
Seconded.
Okay, there is a pending MR on the nonprofit repo that gives a draft funding plan. I don't want to go into all the details of the draft document. I want to highlight some of the key points and the urgent items, and then we need to go back and do a review of the document and get that up to date. And we'll potentially adopt that at the next meeting. So to date, we've been focusing on pursuing funding for the Redox Summer of Code. We need to continue that, but there are some larger sovereign funds and foundations that have minimum amounts that are quite large. As an example, one of the larger ones is the German Sovereign Tech Fund, and it has a minimum proposal value of 150,000 euros. So when we request funds from the German Sovereign Tech Fund, we need to make sure that we're making a request that's at least 150,000 euros. We need to agree on what we're asking for. So the ask for different types of donor organizations. So an ask is the amount of money that we want from the donor organization and a list of concrete things that the money will be used for. So we need to design certain asks around the amounts that are available for different types of donor organizations. So smaller donors, we would be asking for a smaller amount and for a smaller number of things. Larger organizations, we would ask for something that reaches the level that they're looking to fund. So I've been sort of just winging it in creating the proposals that I've been sending out so far. But I think, Jeremy, as BDFL, you need to really be sort of managing the list of work items that we want to address if we can get funding. And we need to work on then bundling those into different levels for the different potential donors. But it really should be you prioritizing that list. So we need to identify what summer projects we would like to have done. And we need to also identify who can act as a mentor. I personally am available to do some mentoring this summer, and I feel like I can mentor people in certain specific areas, but there are also going to be areas that are where I'm not qualified. So we do want to encourage people to volunteer to act as a mentor, and we can try and associate projects with mentors and then identify people that can do that work. So mentor applications for Google Summer of Code are now open. I don't want to set expectations too high. Google Summer of Code is mainly for people who are new to open source. So we're not, we wouldn't be using it to fund people that are actively contributing to Redox, unless Google decides that it would be willing to fund them. Google's intent is that this is mainly to draw people into contributing to open source, and their hope is that these new people would then continue contributing either to open source in general or to the specific projects that they participate in. And there's a minimum age of 18, but really it's not limited to just students anymore. Google Summer of Code is open to people who are trying to get back into the workforce or trying to otherwise engage with open source. So one of the main things that Google Summer of Code emphasizes for the mentor organizations is to make sure that there's a very solid list of projects. And Google Summer of Code also requests that if you're a new mentor organization, that you not try to take on too many students or applicants. They are looking for a first-time organization. They're looking for you to have roughly 2 mentors per applicant. And then once you've gained experience with Google Summer of Code and know how the whole process works, then you would be able to take on more applicants down the road. So I think we would be looking at 1 or at most 2 applicants this year working through Google Summer of Code for Redox. For the sovereign funds, I think that we need to think big, but similarly, they're asking for very concrete projects that we're looking to fund. They're looking for us to give information about what we believe are the risks to those objectives that we're laying out. And the sovereign funds tend to want us to not duplicate our task lists across multiple sovereign funds. We're only allowed to have essentially one sovereign fund donating to one task list. At least that's a constraint that some of the sovereign funds place on our applications. So I think for the sovereign funds, I think we can have more of a focus on funding our key contributors and growing our list of high-end contributors. So other than approaching the foundations and pursuing things like Google Summer of Code and so on, and other sort of established funds, I think we need to try to build partnerships with corporations. We do have a contact with the Risk V team. I've forgotten the name of that group, but we have one such situation now where we're in contact with a technical representative. I think that we need to approach other major vendors, at least to begin the dialogue with them, to introduce ourselves and make sure that they take our work seriously. I think we need to start building relationships with NVIDIA, Intel, ARM, and so on. It might be a little too early for us to pursue large donations from the vendors, but I think those relationships do take time, and we need to start the conversation with them and figure out how to draw them in and get them comfortable with the idea of funding us. There's a few other topics mentioned in the funding plan, and I'd like to get some feedback in our review process. Alberto and I are happy to focus some time on the fundraising, but Jeremy, we need to definitely be on the same page with you and make sure that we're asking the right things. So I think developing lists of task lists and focusing them on specific target amounts, that will help make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're presenting Redox in the right way. Jeremy, do you want to add anything, or do you want to just make a motion to postpone the discussion until we've reviewed the funding document?
Yeah, I'd like to add a few things. So the way I see it, we have three different kind of aspects of Redox that we need funding for. And Alberto brought up in the private chat the idea of bounties. And that's kind of a small, bite-sized way to contribute to Redox and get funded. Then we have a kind of moderate level, which is the Redox Summer of Code program. So that's taking one person their entire summer to do a moderately sized project. And then we have something that we haven't really been able to go after until we had this nonprofit entity, and that was larger projects that require a full-time engineer to really accomplish. And the unfortunate truth is that without already having those, it's hard for Redox to get to the place where it can go after those kinds of projects. So you kind of have to bootstrap the first one. We have to come up with a very good reason why a fund such as the Sovereign Tech Fund would be comfortable giving that amount of money to a project that hasn't received that amount for a specific project, for a specific task yet, as opposed to all the hundreds of other projects that could receive the same amount. And that requires some very clever person engineering is what I would call it. And I'm not a very person-oriented person. I think Ron definitely is. And what I would do is I would try to come up with some tasks that are long-term that would require a full-time engineer, and elaborate on them. And I can help generate connections to people in the industry. But after that, I would really hope to hand it over to Ron to assist with the personal details of making those things happen. I think we need to approach this on two different sides, because on one, we absolutely need to go after the big fish, the corporate donations that could fund large projects like that. But on the other, we need to increase our regular funding, our what I would call the regular user funding, where we have people chipping in $20, $100 to the project. And that's through Patreon, through PayPal, and in the past through cryptocurrency. Those donations have helped us build the Redox Summer of Code program. And the Redox Summer of Code program has made tremendous progress on both bringing in contributors and integrating them into Redox, and some of that being permanent, and also pushing projects that may not be extremely large scale, but are moderately scaled and very difficult to do without having, with just volunteer time, without being able to pay for time. So our t-shirt sales, I think they're pretty good considering the amount of views that we've had on them. I think if we really want to expand that piece of just regular user funding, we need to put out more news and have more drives to donate, and especially targeting platforms where we can get more views. There's an old rule in just social media. It's what I would call the 99.1% rule. If you get 90% of people to view, or you get 100% of people to view something, 90% of them only look at it. 9% of people may interact with it, like they click the like button. And 1% of people will actually leave a comment. You get very small percentages that will actually go through a link that you post. And that's exactly what I saw when I posted the link for the t-shirts. I got a few hundred views on the actual post. Only 100 people went through to the actual link, or less than 100, and we only had a couple sales. I think there's a few things of that. We have limited merchandise, and we also have high prices for the merchandise. And then for our Patreon, we've been noticing that our donations have fallen off recently. And part of that is just the general economic conditions, but I think another part of that is we haven't done a big release and done a lot of news to bring up interest in Redox in quite a while. So there's kind of two aspects we need to work on. On the one side, I want to investigate with the rest of the board how we can keep the interest in Redox, keep people viewing the project, and keep the regular user donations going so that we can fund the Redox Summer of Code project more strongly. And then myself and Ron, we need to work on very large donation projects. And that will require a lot of research and a lot of effort and a lot of time meeting with people. And I think the payoff will be huge. And once we land one of those kinds of contracts, we'll be able to land more. If we're funded one time by the Sovereign Tech Fund, then they may come back to us next year. We can fund again and again and again. But getting the very first one will be difficult. So I hope there was information in there that was useful. Any comments?
I think it definitely was all useful information, and I feel like we are on the same page. I'm not necessarily a particularly person-oriented person, but I learned to fake it. So
Yeah.
I can help out. I have dealt with senior corporate people in the past, so I can hopefully build relationships and I'm not frightened by the idea of trying to build a relationship with, say, for example, an NVIDIA, where I would start with a technical representative, um, and then sort of make friends in the organization up the chain until we get to
Sure.
somebody that can approve things. One of the things that Alberto and I have been working on is a sort of a script for a sort of an introducing Redox video that we would like you to do. I think that the general idea is that you need to sort of continue to be the face of Redox, um, showing up in various places, um, which I think is going to mean, doing a few videos when time permits, and um, interacting with people who have technical podcasts as you've done in the past. Maybe as we get close to a Redox release, it would be good to connect with people who have previously interviewed you, and maybe one or two people that we identify as um, popular podcasters that might be interested, and have you do some interviews with those people. So a little bit of getting your name and face out there on the social media side, and having me focus more on the building relationships with the potential corporate and foundation type donors.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we were able to multiply, I think if we multiply the people who saw the T-shirt post by 10, it would have been 20 sales instead of 2. It's just a matter of views, and one very big thing that we're missing out on is video content. And Alberto has also talked about doing a demonstration video where we go through Redox and show all the things running on it. And then another thing I want to make sure to do is to make regular news posts about when we have major breakthroughs. I think they happen far more often than we give ourselves credit for. Like recently doing a huge refactor on the way paths are handled. I think it's a very important thing to talk about and to publicize. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are interested in Redox, especially in the Rust community, who they know it exists, but they don't really know how important funding it is, or how important the low-level work we're doing is. And when you boot it up and it looks the exact same as it has for the past, I don't know, 5 years, it's hard to demonstrate what's actually been changing.
Yeah, I think the cosmic work that you're doing, cosmic edit and so on, that we can show on Redox, that has the glossiness that you can put in a video, whereas the changes to the underlying mechanisms, path and libredox and so on, you can't do a video about that very well. So
Right.
I do think that we want to have a more technical video where we can kind of go over, what Redox is and what makes it different from Linux, for example, um, as well as making sure that we do videos when we have something with a little bit of sparkle to it. And I think we also need to do sort of point releases, um, every month or 3 months, just whatever we have, just do a mini release, an 8.2, an 8.3, 8.4, so that there's a corresponding announcement that goes with it. And I
Yeah.
think that we have to get used to always saying, hit that like button and subscribe and buy our merch, and we just have to face the reality that we've got to sell ourselves.
Yeah, every time that you get another view on a link, it really is the only thing that matters. However silly that is to say, anytime that I have, like for System 76, when we launched a new version of the launch keyboard, it was a very clear formula how many views the website for that keyboard got versus how many sales we had for probably 2 or 3 weeks after we had publicized that it was available. So having regular news, having new merchandise, and making it as easy as possible for people to give you money is the best way to increase our regular user income, which then funds the Summer of Code project and maybe more than that. I don't see it going much beyond what it already is. Like it's not going to be an order of magnitude higher. It's not going to be $70,000 instead of 7,000. But it comes with much fewer strings. So it's money that we can use for any task. Whereas when we go after those large corporate donations, they're going to come with strings, and we're going to have to allocate developers to do exactly what they are wanting to have done. So I think it's a good balance and good health for a project to have both, and to have both operating and both be growing over time. I think our lack of news has definitely been part of why we've lost donation income over the past year. And the other being just general economic conditions. But this is something where, since such a small percentage of people know what Redox is and know that it needs to be funded, I can definitely say that there's a lot of donations on the table that we could get if we did what you said, if we had more regular news posts with releases, with point releases, and if we did videos and tried to reach a larger audience.
Can I comment?
Sure.
Once you have your first big donor, we can think to hire other people to help us to contact people and develop relationships with companies and corporations. And
That's right.
And I plan to make the first Redox demo on the YouTube channel. Once we have many interesting things to present or reveal, like games, emulators, and videos. And I have current difficulty to play back with FFmpeg to play a video on the Redox demo. And I think it's very important, but we need to improve our scheduler to have better CPU time
Right.
usage.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuttering when playing back videos, especially if they're large resolution.
Yes, the video I'm trying to play is a full HD, I think. And
Yep.
about the community outreach, from years, Redox is had for Nick's articles, and it's very important. Once we release our last development priorities blog post, Fornix did an article for it, and it was very important because we have one of the largest Linux and FOSS article writers of the world, and it's very important.
That's right. Yeah.
About the easy way to make donations for Redox, I suggested the creation of an Open Collective account because they process and manage crypto donations for us. We don't need to keep a wallet for many cryptocurrencies, for example.
Yeah, I've been thinking about opening up crypto donations because that is the largest singular source we've had in the past. There's still the issue with Ethereum, but maybe we can manage it a little better if we provide some information on the donation page about how to verify that the Ethereum you're sending is not tainted in a way that would make accepting the donation legally difficult. And then other cryptocurrencies do not have the same problem because there are no sanctions like the Tornado Cash sanctions on other cryptocurrencies. So I would consider Bitcoin, Monero, Ethereum donations, opening those up again, because that has been a significant source of income in the past.
Does you prefer to keep a private wallet for them yourselves, or you prefer to pass the responsibility to a collective?
I would prefer to create a wallet for the nonprofit, and we'd have a hardware wallet, and that would be potentially, it could be stored in a safe deposit box.
I see.
Ron, do you have any thoughts about this?
I would tend to convert to fiat currency fairly quickly.
Yeah.
It's easiest to
rather-
handle if we convert it to fiat as soon as possible. The downsides have been that if an exchange owns your wallet, then they can cancel your account at any time, and you really can't just put a wallet address out there for people to donate to if you don't maintain control of it. So one mechanism to do that would just to be every month to deposit, to convert all of the donations accepted in crypto, to review them and convert them. And that can be done with a hardware wallet. I really think we're kind of shooting in the dark here, because if we were to ask people, if we were to have some way to ask people if they would donate if they had a certain cryptocurrency available, that may provide us more information than guessing. There's a lot of options right now, and I know Bitcoin is popular enough, but I don't know after that what else we should allow. Ethereum, I've thought about Monero because I've had some interactions with people in the Monero community, and but it's also extremely, I think, risky, because I see that basically the way Tornado Cash worked and the reason why it was sanctioned by the US government is built into the Monero protocol. So I think we have to come up with real donations that we'd be missing out on if we don't have a specific cryptocurrency enabled.
Yes,
I
we
see.
do currently have the opportunity with drips. It's still pending. We have not been able to identify somebody who just wanted to take on the responsibility for Termion in exchange for the Ethereum-based drips currency. There's also a US dollar equivalent for that.
Yep.
I forget what it's called. But we need to be able to take advantage of opportunities like that, and that one is still out there and available. But I don't know how much longer we can put them off. So we might want to find, in the very short term, a way for us to, accept the drips offer and have that money come to either Redox or a specific person at Redox.
The way to protect the best, and realizing that this is recorded, we should be very careful with anything tangential to legality. The sanctions are very clear that if money comes from Tornado Cash and goes to your account, which is exactly what happened prior that made me shut down the Ethereum donations, it came directly from Tornado Cash to the Ethereum account. Then it has to be held, and you have to file for OFAC compliance, and that's what I ended up doing. That was my own personal Ethereum account, and it. However, this is only a U.S. specific thing. So if someone outside the United States is to set up an Ethereum account and receive such money, then there is no such sanction for them to comply with. So, and once it is outside of that transaction directly from Tornado Cash to an Ethereum account that you own, a U.S. citizen can accept that money because it's no longer coming from a sanctioned entity. So, really, for the DRIPS opportunity, it's the risk of potentially having it go through Tornado Cash, which I think is very low. It's very low because the sanctions have had the intended effect, and now people don't use Tornado Cash. Then we just have to verify before that money moves out of the Ethereum wallet that it didn't come from a sanctioned entity. That's all we have to do.
Good. Based on the Redox donation history, you received a donation in the last years, a big donation, and it was from Bitcoin, and seems to be
Yes.
using it normally with no problems. Tools, I think we should prioritize the Bitcoin wallet over Monero and focus on Bitcoin.
Absolutely, my first would be Bitcoin because it has no sanctions applied to it. It's very easy and widely used. So that would be priority number one if we were going to enable cryptocurrency. And also, I would say I plan to bring in the rest of that money, as I've said in the past. I plan to donate pieces of that money every year. So $10,000 last year. The total was $86,000, and I converted it instantly. Every year, I can donate $10,000 especially to cover the Redox Summer of Code project. But I am hoping that over time, the nonprofit itself has stable income streams to work with, especially so that we can target having a full-time employee. For example, upgrading the community manager to a full-time position.
Yes, I think continuity of knowledge is huge value for us. Redox is a very complicated thing, and it's a shame when people are not able to continue working on Redox because they're busy with their career, and we have lost a number of contributors as a result in the past of them having to go and find a full-time job. And I want to do what I can to make sure that we have as much continuity as possible with our our key contributors. And my goal is for us to be able to go out and get those those 10x developers. And Redox is a great project. People love working on it. And having people who are highly productive and highly independent are enormous value. And some of those people are working on Redox right now. And I'd like to see us be able to fund more of that and ensure there's continuity.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because if for example, if Cosmic were to be developed by a nonprofit, I think it'd be a lot easier to bring in donations because it's something visual and something very easy to get popular appeal for. For Redox, we have to be quite creative. How do we make trudging through the lower levels of operating system hell an interesting thing for both donors and contributors? It's very difficult to do that. But I would say we have been pretty successful already with the amount of people who know about the project and the level of donations we're getting now. It's not enough to have a full-time employee, but it is more than a lot of projects are able to get in the Rust ecosystem. So I'm hopeful for the future, especially if we can do our, click the like button and subscribe below, and don't forget to buy our merch. If we can do that more often and get more views and more, I really think we'll build up what we need to fund a full-time engineer.
May I add my own 2 cents?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I happen to notice that you mentioned before that Redox tends to not evolve on its exterior sides too much. My thinking is that we focus heavily on optimizing the way it appears to users and potentially people looking to donate the project by focusing on getting the website up to a point where it's exceptionally easy to find information, documentation, and examples, demonstrations. We make the operating system itself visually very, very appealing by working heavily on Orbital, for instance, and just prioritizing the way it appears. Because I believe that to be a driving factor of operating systems, especially to people who are not 100% familiar with the inner workings of such a monster, as you put it yourself.
Yeah.
I would like to strongly emphasize my tendency to base my opinions of things on appearances, and as a result, tend to find the same thing with operating systems, and I believe that could be of enormous value.
There's one thing that you will always see on any website of any popular Linux distribution, and it's the first thing that you will see, and it is a screenshot. Even if the Linux distribution is like Fedora, where that screenshot is just showing the desktop environment that has no changes for Fedora specifically, that's what people want to see. And you can go through and you can look OpenSUSE, Ubuntu, Fedora, Elementary OS. They all have a screenshot, and of course Pop OS. And it's like, and it's the unfortunate truth that what makes a Linux distribution usually is very little to do with the desktop environment, because they all have the same options in terms of that, and more to do with the packaging system and the choices that they make at a lower level about when they're going to update certain packages. But for Redox, we have an interesting thing where we are different. We don't have Linux desktop environments, and we probably won't for a very long time. So we have total freedom to make our desktop environment unique and something only available on Redox, and something that can draw people's eyes. And we have the opportunity to reuse Cosmic applications because they can run on Redox OS. We can theme them differently. We can adapt to them very quickly. I mean, I spend time when I'm working on new applications to make sure that they always run on Redox. That's one of my guiding principles for doing work on Cosmic. So I absolutely agree that the visual component is definitely something we're missing on. And it's both for the videos, like what Ron had mentioned before and what Alberto had mentioned with the demo video, and also for the screenshots and the documentation on the website. It's a lot of visual content, and when you're selling, I put that in quotes, when you're trying to get donations, when you're selling an operating system, how it looks is 100 times more important than the path format that it uses.
It's
Yeah.
unfortunately not a nice thing to say, but I tend to find the same thing.
Yeah,
Can I have a
I
word?
think that, yeah, sure.
About the operation system notation, I think operation system project must focus on what applications it can run and which devices it work on. And I think it's the most important aspect on an operation system. The user wants the things to work, and he wants his applications to work. And if you can if you can show that these important applications of the Linux system works, we have a good strategy to gain community attention. And I agree with Ron that continued involvement with Redox is better than bounties, because if you see other operating system projects like BSDs or any Linux distribution, they don't make bounties. They prefer to have donations and hire full-time developers.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like we're pretty much in agreement. We need to focus on growing our income and getting some very large donations, corporate donations, and things like grants from government. And we need to focus on how to sell the operating system so that more people realize what it's capable of right now. We need to do more regular releases. We need people to not forget about Redox. It's like the last time I posted some news about Redox in the Rust channel, it wasn't, oh wow, you've posted so much stuff. You've got so much done in such a small amount of time. That used to be the reaction that I got. It's not like that anymore. We've been at this project for a good 7, almost 8 years. It's more like, oh wow, I almost forgot about Redox. I don't feel like we've slowed down. I feel like we haven't spent quite the opposite. I think perhaps we haven't spent enough time selling the work that we've done. And there's been a lot of new contributors. I look at Bjorn. I don't know his real name, but he just all of a sudden decided to start making huge changes in the kernel, in drivers, in the installer, and all over the place. And we aren't publicizing that, and I haven't talked to him about being part of the Redox Summer of Code project, but it's likely maybe he just disappears after he gets bored and has to go back to the real world. That's the kind of contributor that we should try our best to keep in the project. Someone who is very technical, can make a lot of very positive changes throughout the ecosystem, because that's one problem with having a microkernel is there's a lot of ecosystem. You have to make changes here and there and there and there in a dozen different repositories. Having that kind of knowledge of how it's all loosely strung together is difficult to learn and difficult to keep. And all of you had hit on all of these points, so I think we have the only thing that we're missing on is time to finish what we need to do. Time to make videos, time to draft new releases, time to negotiate with donors.
Can I have words?
Yep.
I think these good technically developers like Bjorn came to Redox because of Ron investment on the RustOS dev posts, because they have meditation from Rust developers. And I think the most important part, I think the best change, one of the best changes that I made on the Redox the documentation website was the FAQ. Basically,
Yeah.
Redox was lacking a FAQ since 2015 to 2023, and
And the
it's
book was
mainly
mostly stubs. The
yes,
book was mostly, to do, 100 different to do pages, and you've cleaned that all up. That's a very important way to get people into the project.
yes,
It
and
certainly makes it a lot easier. I definitely had a hard time in the beginning, and now absolutely not anymore. So thanks to you again, Ruben. That was a great effort. Is a great effort.
and before the FAQ, yeah, the community, the average user could not know that we had advanced drivers. Like for example, before the fact, how the community would know that we have NVMe support, PCIe support, USB, and SATA, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, the only way to know was to try it. And if it didn't go right, it was very hard to figure out why. There's yeah, I've been focusing on very low level technical aspects because I've always believed if you do a very tiny thing wrong at a very low level, it makes it very hard to port very large swaths of software that make certain assumptions. That's the path refactor, for example.
Mhm.
That's why I started by trying to re-implement Linux syscalls directly. Eventually, we got away from that, but that's why everything is focused out of relibc. It's an attempt to make it as portable as possible, but we've already leveraged that to such an extent. So many things are ported. It's become almost difficult to manage because like Ribbon's created so many work in progress recipes that do work. And it's hard to review and merge them into the non-work in progress trees. It's time to kind of cash out. We've put in the investment at the lower level with relibc, with the kernel, with the drivers, that Redox boots on many, many machines, and it runs many, many applications, but I don't think people really know that. So it's probably time to get away from low level changes for myself and to come up with high level ways to represent what we're doing. And I think an important milestone for me will be to make a new release and to summarize all the changes that we've made in the release notes. And then it will go to Phoronix. It will get views from all those people that we want. And when they come back to it, since the 0.8 release, we've done significant improvements to the website, like what you mentioned with the FAQ and with the book. We can update the screenshots. We can show Cosmic applications running and with themes and make it look very pretty. We can have our next release be the milestone for trying to get back into the rhythm of regular releases with graphical, obvious improvements and things that we can make a visual person, which I think most people are very visual, get enthused by.
Yes, I think the Cosmic port will be one of the most important advancements and achievements, I think, because the host community is there's much hype on it to be a very stable desktop environment compared to the others, and I think we can do little improvements and additions to our community to show some progress. Like for example, run a matrix run to show GitLab updates, and some projects do this.
Sorry, can you say that again?
matrix run to show GitLab updates bot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also we need to look at our website. It's still very 90s. And I think that that's partly intentionally, but I think that we have to um, look at it more as a selling tool and
Yeah. It's a
funneling
copy
people.
of the old Rust website.
Mhm.
It's like a literal copy, and I hate it because every time I go through, there's just so much junk. Like when I was trying to implement dark mode, there's so much junk left over from that copy. The CSS files are dirty, frankly, just dirty, and it's hard because we really want to take the content and reformat it and rewrite all of the surrounding junk to make it look nice, while keeping the content we already have. So that's something that will be a pretty big investment of time.
I noticed that the Redux website used the base of the Rust website. For example, I think the Rust website don't use Hugo. I think it uses in the book, and I think if you
It
could,
used to. I'm
it
saying
uses
it's a
Hugo.
copy of the old Rust website. We're talking from around 2015. And so it used to use Hugo. I wouldn't use Hugo now. No, absolutely not.
What about today?
Well, my own website is a static website, but that's very, very, very complicated. I think if I was doing it today, I would still use something that would render Markdown templates. I'm not sure if it would be MDBook though, because that works for the book, but it seems like it has a lot of limitations with translations. With I think Hugo is actually just fine if we were to clean up the all of the CSS and the partials and make it look nice, and try to optimize the website too.
I've been working on a website for my company at the moment, and obviously our company doesn't have the requirements for a hugely dynamic website, and so it ends up being a static site as well. It turns out the code on that one is very, very straightforward and very easy to implement. If you want me to essentially rid the template of any company-specific things, it allows you to simply upload Markdown documents and various templatable HTML templates that can be represented in various different languages, etc., etc., etc. To toot my own horn here, it's quite an impressive project. If you'd like me to pitch that to you, either personally or via the board channel, then I'm happy to do that. But just so that you know,
Absolutely.
I'm very skilled with web
Absolutely.
development. I've done, if I may say so myself, a very good job.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think all we'd need to be able to do is take the Markdown files that we have, all the history we have, and through a very, very minimal process, convert them to a new system that can use them as templates.
Mhm.
And I don't think Hugo is dragging us back in time. I don't think Hugo is much of a problem. You can replace it just as easily with any static site generator. I think the problem is the static style that we have is just very outdated.
I see. What about the Rust website? Does it use JavaScript for styling?
I think there is Bootstrap is the only JavaScript library that I've brought in, and that was for some styling, and also all the Bootstrap CSS. If I was doing it from scratch now, I would not bring in any third-party frameworks because they usually hurt the load time significantly. And just with simple CSS, you can do so much with modern CSS. So you can make it look really pretty. I think we would want to, if we have a style that we'd be going for applications inside of Redox, we would apply that style somewhat to our website.
Can I propose that we outline all of this formally so that we have a structure and a framework that we can base all of our design schemes and systems on for future
Yeah.
Redox applications in the website? I propose we outline all of this formally.
Yes. Okay, so I have one tiny requirement that I just want to state, actually two requirements. So one requirement is that we want to be able to host the website. We want to eventually have a server running on Redox and be able to host the static site. I don't think that's a particularly big ask. We're going to just have to have a way of packaging the static site and delivering that to our server. And then the other thing is that we've got to think about the browser on Redox and try and make something that works with that. But I don't want to make that a big constraint.
Yeah, that's one reason to avoid JavaScript entirely. And so we do static site gen, we use CSS and HTML for all of the styling, and NetSurf ought to be able to load it just like it loads the current website. There's a lot of stuff we could do to fix up the current website without switching to another generator. I think we just imported a lot of bad styles from the old Rust website, and we will need some design, formal design, to understand how we'd change it and how we'd improve the way it looks.
Okay, so
once we have that,
I remember that we could also use WebAssembly.
yeah, it's a we could use WebAssembly. Yeah, that won't run on NetSurf at all, though.
Yeah.
We gotta make a browser if we do that, or port servo, which I do not think is going to happen very easily. I already tried, and there was a ton of crap that isn't quite working right.
I think
for
that
such
we can,
yeah.
I think
Go
that we
ahead.
can have high end goals, but I think that we also need to have some short term. Here's what we can do, kind of thing. So Jacob, can we action you to maybe there's two different tacks here. One is let's look at what we can do now, and the second one would be looking at alternatives for the static site generator and so on.
Just to clarify what you mean by that, you mean I'm to look into what can be done to reorganize the website now versus rebuilding the website from the ground up.
Just to coordinate the conversation there, put your own ideas down, and then invite us to comment.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to move forward if anybody else has anything else they want to jump in with. Otherwise, I'd like to get a motion to close the conversation.
Can I have a word? I
Sure.
would just say one last thing. I don't have anything against Ugo. It's pretty great. It works, and NetSurf can handle it. But we can't self-hosting it. It can't run the website offline because we don't support Go, the Go language, and that's it.
That's not quite right. Just like MDBook, Hugo only runs to generate the site, and then once the site is generated, you can host it with any web server. So, and we already have ports for, well, I'd have to check, but I've already used, I ran some simple Rust web server. I don't remember which one. It might have been Rocket, or it might have been Actix, but we definitely have something we can run the files with. So we just have to run Hugo on a Linux system to generate the HTML and CSS, and then that gets uploaded to the Redox server.
Now it makes sense. No,
Yeah,
good,
and the
very
same
good.
process with MDBook. So we can run MDBook.
Sorry, again, on my experiences with my company's website here, this all happens through GitHub Actions. It's very, very clean. And yeah, you can essentially mount Git repositories as file systems on a local file share, and you can push, for instance, Word documents up there and automatically rebuild the website. So that was a really cool thing. So obviously you get for GitHub Actions, you can even build a Redox container, as far as I'm aware. So that could be a really cool thing to investigate.
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion to close the conversation?
Moved.
Seconded.
Okay, asking to postpone the conversation until we've had a chance to write some suggestions, some proposals with Jacob to drive that conversation. All in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
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 Okay, on motion duly moved, seconded, and carried, we request that Jacob lead the conversation on the website improvements. Okay. Next topic is nonprofit public repo. So I'd like to suggest that we move the as much of it as possible of the nonprofit GitLab repo to a public repo. So the bylaws, the conflict of interest policy, meeting minutes, budget, financial reports would all be items to move. Can I get a motion to request Jeremy to create a public repo and to have Alberto coordinate moving the above documents to the public repo?
Moved.
Seconded.
Is there any discussion that you would like to engage in here? Any proposals or suggestions?
We should expose the information about the nonprofit on our website as well. And that includes a list of the active directors and their officers and their current roles, and a contact information. We have the aliases for our emails that we can use, and link to the repository. So we should have a website page for this, and maybe have it linked from the front page. And then the repository itself, anything that we bring in has to be carefully looked at to make sure that no private information such as addresses, phone numbers, private emails gets released. We should be clear on the minutes that have been recorded. I don't think any such information like that has ever been recorded. The bylaws and conflict of interest policy are completely good to go. But any documents that we move over before the merge request is even created need to be scrubbed. So because of that, I would make a branch of the private repository where we stage what we want to move to the public repository. And then we all agree to go through that. And once we've all approved, then we can copy that branch directly over. And that allows for a review process because if we make a merge request into a public repository, then it's already lost if anything private was in that information. Okay?
Sounds good.
And be sure to reset the Git history.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, so there would be no Git history once we create the nonprofit public repo. The files would be staged in a branch of the private repo. When we all approve of a specific commit of that branch, then we copy all the files directly over to the public repo.
So like a file system copy rather than a Git branch, for instance.
Exactly. So that clears all of the previous history of those files. and ensures that we're only getting exactly the contents of those files.
That sounds good. Okay.
Moving forward, we can dump the minutes directly into the public repository and the financial reports and the budgets if we would like to.
Agreed. Okay. If there's no further discussion, it's moved and seconded that we request Jeremy to create a public repo for the nonprofit, and that Alberto coordinate, according to Jeremy's recommendation, Alberto coordinate moving the previously mentioned documents into a branch for eventual movement into a public repo. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
Aye.
Upon motion duly moved and carried, moved, seconded, and carried, we request Jeremy to create the repo, public repo, and that Alberto will create a branch of the private repo and begin moving the documents into that branch for review. Okay. I'd like to propose the agenda for the next meeting. We will, of course, review the minutes for this, review and approve the minutes for this meeting. We'll have a report on the fundraising and promotion activities and a review of the fundraising plan. And I'd like to have a report on the trademark. And I believe we will be reviewing the financials in the next meeting as well. Financials for 2023. Okay, is there any other business to discuss for this meeting?
I can imagine that in the next board meeting, we will be discussing developments and evolutions to the outwards perspective of Redox, so things like social media. So that could be also added onto the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, so the fundraising promotion will cover outreach as well.
I see.
I didn't have that on my list, so I'm adding it. Okay, anything else? If there being no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Seconded.
It's moved and seconded that we adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The meeting's adjourned. Thanks very much, everybody.